Hello and welcome to Justice Live. My name's Jenny Afia and I'm a lawyer at Schillings International. We specialise in protecting the reputation, privacy and security of individuals and organisations. We see a lot of injustice in our work when people are the targets of untrue claims and assaults on their privacy, so are passionate about fairness, the rule of law and equity. It is a real privilege to be collaborating with Peace One Day to present Justice Live on the International Day of Criminal Justice. Eleanor Laws KC, it's fantastic to speak with you today. Welcome to Justice Live.
Happy Justice Day to you. Nice to see you, Jenny.
Could you start by telling us a bit about your journey to this point?
Well, I wasn't destined to come into the law. When I was at university, I was studying history and was going to start work actually on an underwater excavation off the coast of Turkey. But then my family was struck by tragedy. My older brother died while on holiday, and in short, the country he was holidaying in were determined to class it as a suicide. And so what then followed was a great family battle started by my parents to get to the bottom of what actually happened, and it involved an inquest, instructing a barrister for that and instructing experts. And also, because my brother was quite well known, there was quite a bit in the local press about him in North London. And so everything changed. And the reality was that we instructed a barrister who was very well known and expensive to turn up to the inquest. And he didn't ask a single question and really let my parents down, who'd put a lot of faith and obviously a lot of money into this. And so I challenged him afterwards, and I think it was that moment when I realised that perhaps I could do something, and that there was so much trust and faith put in the system by my parents who'd been let down. So in short, I then, within a couple of months, completely changed my mind and decided I wanted to study law, and actually contacted that barrister and I think played on his sense of guilt and work shadowed with him, and then decided to completely switch. I'd read history and studied law. Then once I started my pupillage, which is our training, I just realised I absolutely loved it, and in particular loved the advocacy and loved really the whole idea of being involved in the criminal justice system.
Wow. Well, firstly, I'm so sorry to hear your loss. That's horrific, but it's also it's amazing to hear how you turned that pain into purpose. It's incredible. Can you describe for us what your role is now as a criminal barrister?
Now, it's changed really over the years. I mean, I started off doing prosecuting and defending really just in criminal cases, and the cases would get more and more serious the more experienced I got. So from thefts and violence to homicide, people trafficking, drug trafficking. And then that changed again really after I took silk. So now it's a real variety, but I mostly now defend in criminal cases involving either people with a profile or usually something quite interesting, and then also representing people in disciplinary hearings, so young people at universities and at school, and also young people in the workplace often facing investigations, and also in other areas, so in civil law, personal injury cases. And I also do quite a lot of advisory work for governments, actually, about how to approach dealing with certain aspects of the criminal justice system. So quite varied, but mostly I'm in court.
And what does justice mean to you?
Justice, two levels really. Justice generally for me, means ensuring that everyone has a voice and that the whole process is fair. So whatever the process is, whether that is justice in a social situation, within a school or within a university or in the workplace, so someone facing allegations or someone being talked about, justice there is to ensure that on a personal level you are not prejudging anything, or if you're judging something and looking at both sides. But in the bigger sense of the word, really, justice for me means exactly the same thing. So criminal justice, it's the fairness of the whole process. So to ensure that the police act swiftly, appropriately, proportionately, fairly, and that they don't, if they come across evidence, they don't bury it or put it to one side. And then it means having a robust system once, if someone is charged, that once they get to court, that they get a fair hearing in court, so they are properly represented and robustly defended, and that the prosecution prosecute cases fairly. So I used to prosecute a lot. I tend to only defend now, but it's really important when you're prosecuting to ensure that you are fair, and when you're defending, you have to be fearless, because really when you have the might of the state against you, and very often public opinion against you, there is a lot that you are facing, and you really do need robust representation. And then finally, and most importantly, a just and fair outcome. So you want to ensure that the jury put aside all their preconceptions or any popular ideas they may have, and actually look at the evidence fairly without any distraction. I mean, I should also say that I sit as a judge part-time as well, and that really does test your notion of fairness and really ensure that every day that you do that job, that you are absolutely looking at the evidence really carefully and making sure that you're not letting any potential bias come into the equation. So it's having a robust system that is confident enough in itself. Every party involved is confident enough in itself to withstand scrutiny.
And with these two different hats on, you mentioned that you're a leading criminal lawyer in court, and then you're also sometimes act as a judge. In those different roles, do you ever have any different view of justice or any different sort of considerations?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're defending, you're very much looking at the evidence against your case. Obviously, your role in the system, therefore, is to robustly defend your client. So you have to look at deconstructing their evidence, using strategy, being strategic about your decisions, understanding how to deal with difficult evidence. So it is playing the part within the system. When you are sitting as a judge, you are really acutely aware of your role as a referee, if you like. And so you have to, it's then that you really are thinking all the time about what is the just decision. And that can be anything from making a decision about whether someone gets bail or not before their trial, or it can be really important legal arguments, you're taking account of that. And then finally making sure that when you sum the case up to the jury, you're really scrupulous about making sure that you're not telling the jury directly or indirectly what you think they should be doing. And then finally, and I think the most, for me, rewarding aspect of sitting as a judge is the ability, if it gets to a sentencing hearing, so if someone's found guilty of something or they plead guilty, to actually look in the round at the sentence. And particularly with young people, the key there is rehabilitation, because prison serves a purpose, obviously, for punishment and to take dangerous people out of the community for a while. But the reality is we want to live in a community where people can get proper second chance, but also can become productive members of society. And you've got to, I think, look very carefully at where someone has come from and the problems that they are going to face when they come out of prison, to try and look at perhaps different ways of approaching sentencing them. So it's very different, although you're working either as a lawyer or as a judge within the same system, your roles are completely different.
But you can see how the concept of justice flows through every element. From the start of a case right up to, as you were saying, sentencing, justice is sort of paramount throughout.
It is.
Do you think our digital world is changing the landscape of criminal justice?
Oh, completely. I mean, on every level, really. I mean, on a fundamental basis, because we now have a whole host of new criminal offences that never existed before as a result of online offending, and that can be anything from terrorism offences, harassment, different ways of communicating means and finding things out means that people are accessing illicit material, or people are using illicit material, or people are actually offending online. So that's the first area. There are new offences, but also it just adds a huge layer of additional evidence in most criminal cases. So, for example, really a really new area, relatively new in the law, I mean, i.e. in the last few years rather than the last 200 years, are what we call the encrochat cases, which are cases involving larger criminal organisations using a phone or a device that was previously difficult for the police to investigate, but in fact were able to then, as a result of technology, completely decode it. And so you have cases that are entirely based on very frank and open criminal conversations between high-level criminals that you can read in real time, which you never used to have. Arrangements would be made either over the phone or in person. So, and then right the way down to your average criminal case, there'll always be usually be some sort of mobile phone evidence. And I think so that's not just offending and not just the evidence that we use in court, but also how we can use online facilities to make the courtroom more modern and accessible for witnesses and also for observers. You know, we can zoom into courts and watch them without actually having to go to court, which makes it much more accessible.
What barriers to achieving true justice do you see?
Well, certainly in the criminal justice system, it's the same. I mean, it really is the same as in real life, really. It's first and foremost prejudgment and intolerance. That is a key, whether it be resolving a dispute between your friends. The thing that could cause an unfair outcome is if the person deciding the issue isn't open to hearing both sides. And really the same as in the criminal justice system. And I think first and foremost, it's ensuring that we in the UK, we have the most fantastic criminal justice system. It is suffering through lack of funding because it's not a very fashionable area for politicians to invest in, which is why there's been there's a huge backlog of cases, etc. But the reality is, and it's really little known outside the legal world, we have the most fantastically fair criminal justice system. And it is wonderful to go into court and watch it. I think most people who haven't seen a criminal trial are very surprised by the care that's taken to ensure that there is access to all within financial bounds of the government at the time, but also that the trial process is fair. So really for me, what is a threat to that is a lack of investment, eroding the jury trial, because it's becoming more topical. It's very costly to have a jury. Some people are very critical of juries. I happen to think that they're vital, really, for a fair system. And also lack of funding. Legal aid, I hope, will receive some funding in due course, because, finally, the reality of most people who come before the criminal courts, not without exception, but mostly they are from a different kind of background to the lawyers and the judges that are in the case. So they are very often people who have not had the easiest start in life. Education has failed them, or they failed within the system. The system has failed them. And then for a variety of different social reasons, they are more susceptible and vulnerable to the notion of criminality, really. And so I think we have to remain committed to legal aid and ensuring that everyone gets fair representation, and the continuation of the process that we have now. It's copied around the world. If you go to any country, if you're on holiday or if you are living abroad, you go to any country and in fact watch a trial, you will see that the fundamental basis of any fair trial is based upon the system, our system, and the way that we try and ensure that we get a fair trial. So we should become more aware of that. And I'm, really feeding into what this charity day, Peace One Day, is all about, is that we need to educate ourselves about the justice system that we have. And then if you're interested in that, there are so many things that you can do to support that.
For individuals then, educating themselves about justice helps support justice. Is that the main thing? Is there anything else that individuals can do to support justice?
I think educating yourself, making sure that I would say showing interest if you are, if you hear about a court case, an individual court case that takes your interest, try and read around it, not just from one news outlet. If you hear about an issue that relates to the criminal justice system, try and educate yourself about that. And generally, I would encourage anyone to go and watch a trial, because even if you're not interested in the law, it absolutely confirms really everything that the way we live should be conducted, i.e. fairness, and in the hope that any of us could be vulnerable to an allegation or even a false allegation, and ensuring that we want everyone to be able to be tried fairly. And then once you educate yourself, it's amazing really how many different areas there are that are of interest. Find your passion, so you can become involved in separate groups, so to do with knife crime, or join Amnesty International, or a number of local groups as well. And there's an awful lot that you can do.
Well, that's good to know. And that's been so interesting, Eleanor. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.